Erev Tov to the mountaintops around Tiberias. Good morning in Denver and the mountaintops surrounding you in Colorado. My name's Wayne Firestone, and I am thrilled to be with you. And I promise not to sing, although I'm like in the mood after that great intro. And you're going to hear today, we are going to talk about the mountaintops. We're going to talk about how we are going to celebrate with joy and with a conviction to really honor the legacy of Martin Luther King, to honor Black History and Black Heritage Month, because we have so many friends and allies that understand the great bonds between the Jewish people and the African American community that have been through so much together, but have so further to go. And you're going to see today in our program that this is not a history lesson. This is actually a reflection and a celebration, but it is very much about an embrace of our relationship today and looking forward. And with a great deal of intentionality, our friends at the Consul General in Atlanta have put together really a phenomenal program that has made us, I think, all not only feel proud, but I think you're going to leave this program today really quite inspired. So put in the chat a mountaintop that inspires you, that gives you joy, that brings you to a place where you understand that we have to think big and we have to think together and we have to be a family. And these are the dreams of Martin Luther King that each of us holds in our hearts in different ways. And yet when we come together, somehow that chorus of singers becomes even louder and prouder and brighter and even more inspiring, because that's indeed what we aim to do as friends. And that's our middle name, America-Israel Friendship League. Thanks for the hyphen. Our middle name is Friendship, and this program today really is going to celebrate friendship. I am grateful. You're going to meet a whole bunch of interesting people here today and hear some music, see some incredible video materials in honor of the program today. But first and foremost, I want to present our colleague, Anat Sultan Dadon. We've done programs before the Consul General to the Southeastern United States. She's been in that capacity since 2019. So she's been with us physically to hug us even during this period when we've had to do these sort of virtual hugs at times. She is a career diplomat. She's been with the diplomatic corps since 2004. She served in Cameroon. She served in Germany. She served in Australia. And folks down in Atlanta are thrilled to have her in their backyard. Her background comes from, she's a Hebrew U two-timer with both doing her undergraduate and master's work there. And she brings so much wisdom and experience to her position. But when we started talking about doing this episode, she had a very clear vision that we need to, while we can celebrate the past, we need to also talk about the future. And Anat, I know that's something you've done from the day you arrived. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about the programs that you've established to advance this wonderful relationship, and a little bit about the panelists before we introduce them formally.
Thank you so much. Shalom, everyone. It's so good to be here. Welcome to today's event. We are very glad to be able to partner at the Consulate of Israel to the Southeast with the American-Israel Friendship League. Today, we will be addressing the important topic of shared legacies and future promise, Black-Jewish relations in the United States, past, present, and future. We have some amazing panelists with us today, and I would like to express my sincere appreciation to them for making the time to join us. Rabbi Peter Berg, Senior Rabbi at the Temple Atlanta, a true leader in every sense of the word, a dear friend, and one who actively works every day to bridge gaps, bring people together, and further develops the Temple's historic ties with Ebenezer Baptist Church. Dr. Pauline Plummer, CEO, founder of Covenant Daughters International, speaking with us from Jerusalem, where she is doing amazing work. Also representing Church of God in Christ with her husband, Bishop Plummer. Dr. Plummer is an incredible voice and asset to Israel and Jewish relations with the African American community and so much more. Olamide Fagbamia, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing. So happy to have you with us. Olamide is a Ruth Bader Ginsburg Covenant Fellow at Morehouse College. And our wonderful moderator, Wayne Firestone, Executive Director of the American Israel Friendship League. We are grateful to you for your work and for this partnership. Though we are nearing the end of February and the end of Black History Month, I know that for everyone speaking on this event today, honoring this history is a part of our work year-round. A top priority of our work at the consulate in Atlanta and through our ongoing work is to commemorate and educate about the rich history of African American and Jewish collaboration and mutual support, increase the understanding of commonalities and the shared history between the Christian, African American, and Jewish communities, increase the sustainability of relationships and allyship, further dialogue and cooperation through a variety of events and academic programs aimed at combating and decreasing racism, anti-Semitism, and all forms of hate, and improving the understanding of Israel's history, culture, and politics, while educating about current expressions of racism and anti-Semitism. As our most important target audience is the younger generation, we have focused a lot of our work on HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and have established a very close partnership with Morehouse College, which has evolved into the consulate's flagship project, which is called Covenant. Through the consulate's partnership with the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel at Morehouse College, we commemorate the rich history of African American and Jewish collaboration and mutual support through dialogue, events, and academic programs which draw upon the legacies of African American, Jewish, and Israeli leaders. 4 of them African American, 4 of them Jewish and Israeli, 4 men, 4 women, who are all exceptional, historic visionary figures who each in their own way pioneered and had a significant contribution to peace, justice, reconciliation, bridging between communities, and working together to better the beloved community. These 8 figures selected together by the consulate and the Morehouse Martin Luther King International Chapel are Henrietta Sold, Abraham Joshua Heschel, Constance Baker Motley, Yitzhak Rabin, Samuel Du Bois Cook, Coretta Scott King, Martin Luther King Jr., and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Within the framework of this partnership, we have also started a fellowship program. We've selected 8 leading Morehouse students who have each been researching for the past year one of these 8 figures within the context of Covenant. Each of the students is receiving $5,000 as a part of their fellowship and will soon be presenting their research findings through a creative presentation. We have already secured funding for a 2nd year of the fellowship program, which will enable us to select a further 8 student fellows in the hopes of making this into a permanent annual program, expanding also into other HBCUs in the region. Having Olamide with us today, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Fellow, is a wonderful opportunity to hear about his experience as a fellow. And as mentioned, Wayne, as we look to history and the shared legacies, we must always have our eye on the future and the vital importance of moving forward together. And this is what the conversation today is about as well. So thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to this important conversation.
Thanks so much, Anat. We wanted to recognize, before we get into the discussion with the panelists, we walk on the shoulders of some greats, some of whom you just heard named by Anat for the names of the Covenant Fellows in the program, and we have this wonderful movie that comes out of Atlanta and gives a little bit of the history of this relationship. So we're going to show just a short clip of that to give people here a feel of what preceded this conversation, where the relationship today sort of comes from and is built upon. So we're going to take a quick look at a small trailer from the film Shared Legacies as a way to sort of get us into the conversation. So we'll go ahead and play that now.
There's an African proverb that says if the lions don't tell their stories, the hunters will get all the credit. I'm telling you the story now because you're young lions and lionesses.
My great-grandfather had been in slavery, and it goes across generations. You just don't get rid of it simply because there are no chains on you.
The effects of slavery are still very prominent, just as the effects of the Holocaust are still very prominent amongst our brothers and sisters in the Jewish community.
The Jewish people have the DNA in their soul to look up close to what happened to African Americans after slavery.
We came to the South, young Jews, rabbis, many of them refugees from Nazi Germany. We hear Dr. King quoting the prophets. That was extraordinary. It made us proud.
Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, "The future of America will depend on how it responds to Dr. King."
It was the work that Dr. King had spoken for, fairness, equality, against anti-Semitism, and for freedom for Soviet Jews.
A large Jewish presence in the civil rights movement was evident almost from the beginning.
Well, Stan Levinson and Harry Wachtel were lawyers who were working with Dr. King. They were advisors, marchers, fundraisers. They were in the thick of things.
Many Jewish students worked all across the South. And I will never, ever forget 3 young men, Andy Goodman, Micah Scherner, and James Shaney.
Birmingham is Birmingham.
We all know the Exodus is the central narrative of our redemption. And here is a modern situation. Shall we do nothing?
We could not have gotten anywhere had not Protestants, Catholics, and Jews showed up from all over the world.
Rabbi Yaakov Prinz spoke immediately before Dr. King.
The most shameful and the most tragic problem is silence.
The civil rights challenges of our time, the human rights challenges of our day, they hang on me. They hang on you. They hang on who? They hang on us.
We all need to get together to find out the bigger picture. Those who have been stepped upon have to lead the way.
It's all about our humanity. And if we don't figure out a way truly to work together, we'll just be like hamsters on a wheel. The systemic oppression and issues will just continue.
There are too many people living in fear. If Rabbi Herscher and Martin Luther King Jr. were here today, I think they would be saying, we need to pull together for the generation yet unborn.
The soul of America is at stake.
Well, we have the great privilege of starting our discussion now with a student at Morehouse, Olamide. You are studying public health. You are interested in devoting your life and your graduate studies to making sure that there's equal access for healthcare for minority communities and impoverished communities. And you are a Ruth Bader Ginsburg Fellow in this Covenant program. And I know when we talked before, you were sharing that maybe you didn't know as much about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what that meant. So I'm sort of curious to hear what you see as what indeed you've learned from this so far, and how that's impacting on your own perspective of the things that you want to do to have impact in the world.
For sure. So first off, good morning to you and everyone else that's viewing. I definitely think in my studies of understanding Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg that her efforts to not only push forward for, women and just gender equality in general, it was a heavy impact, of course, but, we don't always talk about how she also helped with just, race and racial issues that happen in the US and abroad. A lot of times, she's not necessarily credited for it, but her impact, that's one thing I recognize here at Morehouse is the biggest thing I'm taking away in my last year is that your impact is really what shakes the world. It's what leaves a lasting impression on people. So I believe in her case, what she was able to do was just being able to co-sign on certain things, was leave a lasting impact. Even her ability to recognize when she may have had a miss error or just realized that she needed to speak up some more, she was able to do that as well. So I think in my research overall, that's kind of what I'm getting to, and I'm hoping to present soon a project that kind of shows everything in photojournalism, where it's describing those different cases where she was able to stand and make her impact and her impression, but also seeing how that is relating to us as African Americans and even Jewish people today.
Well, we know that anytime we can get a student on camera in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, it's always a challenge, and we're really grateful for your being with us today on the panel and sharing your views in the perspective of a younger generation, and very much looking forward to hearing about this project that you're doing and ways in which that can also sort of inform broader communities about the importance of this relationship. I want to now jump across the ocean, take on a magic carpet ride across the Atlantic. We haven't been able to travel to Israel as frequently as many of us would like to, but I'm so thrilled that we get to visit today Mivatzeret Zion. That is where we have Dr. Ruth Pauline Plummer calling in from, and I'm going to let her explain the significance of her work and why she's there. You heard that she's a CEO and founder of the Covenant of the Daughters of Israel International. She has created, she works in media, she's an entrepreneur, and she has brought all of those gifts that are a part of her really to this relationship in an incredibly unique and impactful way. So Dr. Plummer, some people are now calling you a First Lady of Israel. So what exactly does that mean as well?
Wow. Well, first of all, let me say thank you all so much to the American Israel Fellowship for allowing me to be a part of this awesome conversation. And to you, our moderator, and to Consulate General Anat Dadan, and to you, Rabbi Peter Berg in Atlanta, and to our young fellow. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be here. I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the First Lady of Israel for the Kojic denomination, which is the Church of God in Christ. In every one of our churches, how I became First Lady, quote unquote, is that every bishop or pastor in our church culture, the wife is called the First Lady. And so in 2019, my husband was appointed and consecrated and ratified by our General Assembly to become the Bishop of Israel for our denomination. After 112 years, they made a ratified decision to embrace Israel, to stand with Israel, to support Israel. And so therefore he became a bishop, and that's how I assumed my title as First Lady of Israel for the Church of God in Christ. And we are here, boots on the ground, very excited about the work that we have the opportunity to do in terms of strengthening and bridging and fortifying the relationship between Black America and Israel. As you know, Dr. Martin Luther King gave his last speech to our church on April 3rd, 1968, and it was the day before he was assassinated. And it's that great speech that we all are familiar with, which is the mountaintop speech. And he gave that speech, and he made it very clear that, you know, he had been to the mountaintop. He had seen the promised land. And he told us as a people, he says, I might not get there with you, but we as a people will get there. And so he literally came here, and he had started a work of building relationship between Black America and Israel. And he was planning on bringing 5,000 people here, you know, to experience Israel. And so as my husband, who has over the last decades been a great supporter of Israel, and we have brought hundreds of youth here, partnering with another organization so that they can understand the land of their faith, who we are as a people, and who Israel is as the land, as the people, and as a state, and just the importance of, you know, understanding and to bring understanding, because we believe that if it's hard to understand something that you haven't been exposed to. And Dr. Martin Luther King said that the whole world must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world. And so we want our youth and young African-American youth to experience Israel. So that's I know that was a long answer, but that's kind of how I became First Lady and how I got here and why I'm here. And I'm glad to be here.
Well, Dr. First Lady Plummer, that was an answer that really, I think, goes to the shared legacy. I mean, for you to be able to show us that through line that you and your husband have followed Dr. King's inspiration and his support and love for Israel and wanting to share it, just as you're saying, that's very much dear to our hearts. It's the way we feel it's best to build any relationship, but certainly in this relationship is to get to know the people and to visit and to eat with them and play with them and sing with them. And what a true inspiration your family and your church has done by your example. So we're grateful. We're grateful for your sharing the story, for your sharing words directly from Dr. King about his love for Israel and the security of Israel. Were things that he spoke directly to as very much part of this visionary leader who really understood hardship and understood mountaintops that he himself would not be able to reach. I mean, it's just chilling and inspiring at the same time, what he was able to see in his life and share and then plant seeds to others. So thank you for sharing all that. Rabbi Berg, you are a well-known rabbi. Newsweek and the Daily Beast called you one of the top 50 influential rabbis in America. But you have a lot of interesting distinctions as the senior rabbi at the temple, which has this incredible legacy of talking and interacting with your neighboring communities. And it is something that I hope is not only possible in Atlanta. I know you have a lot to be proud of there, but you have also a lot you can share with us about, I think, how this model evolved, including maybe even to get into this by sharing a little bit about the song we were listening to in the introduction, because I don't know, just listening to it sort of changed my mood. It changed my my whole thinking about how to get into this. And I know that's something that you all have really. It's not a one-shot thing. You've really made this part of the recipe for building Black-Jewish relations.
Thanks, Wayne. It's so great to be here with this amazing panel. I'm so inspired. By the way, I've seen Shared Legacies about 78 times, and I cannot get through without crying. Every single time, tears come flying. It's really just what an opportunity to be with so many dear friends and people from all over the world today. Yeah, I will share a little bit about the song, and I think I want to use, Wayne, what you just suggested, that this Black-Jewish relations is never a one-off. It's always about relationship, right? In real estate, everything is location, location, location. In Black Jewish dialogue, it's a relationship, relationship, relationship. Everything is about the relationship. And I want to talk a little bit about that for a few moments. First of all, the history of our congregation. The temple is, you might know it from Driving Miss Daisy, the 1989 film that is filmed partially here at the temple. And the temple is the oldest synagogue here in Atlanta, the largest in Georgia. And it has a storied history for over 150 years of really reaching out into the community. Temple members started the Atlanta public school system. Temple members helped to start Grady Hospital. And the list goes on and on and on. But if you turn back to the civil rights movement, I think the temple took, with the leadership of Rabbi Jacob Rothschild, who was friends with Dr. King, a very strong position on racial justice and integration, a position that, as you can imagine, was not a popular position in the United States of America during that time. Rabbi Rothschild did not relent. He gave sermon after sermon, class after class, and he helped to educate the community about the dangers of the world in which we lived, where segregation was prominent. As a result of his outspoken position, the temple was bombed by white supremacists in 1958, and the rabbi did not relent. You saw a picture of him in that video standing outside the sign where he gave a sermon just a few days after the bombing, titled, based on Isaiah, "And none shall make them afraid." And the temple has been outspoken about our commitment to racial justice ever since that time. It's something it's again, not a one-off, it's something we are so proud of. It is the core of our DNA of who we are and what we stand for. In 1964, when Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize, nobody in Atlanta, particularly the business community, wanted to honor him. And so the faith community, led in part by Rabbi Rothschild, got together and said, we're going to honor Dr. King. He's ours, and he is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. And the first integrated dinner took place at the Dinkler Hotel, the first time Black and white sat together in a hotel room, and Rabbi Rothschild presented Dr. King a gift on behalf of the city of Atlanta. Today, we organize our social justice work focusing on 11 different areas of concern. And racial justice remains our strongest and proudest accomplishment. We have done so much, but we have a long way to go. And we've been working in recent days on the issue of mass incarceration, because the United States of America incarcerates more people than any country in the world. And the state of Georgia incarcerates more people than any other state in the country. And we know that people of color are directly influenced in the prison system more than anyone else. And so we have been working on record restriction summits here at the temple, where individuals who have minor records that go back many years, they're not being prosecuted, and it's clogged up in the system. They can't get a job, they can't get a house, they can't get a loan, they can't travel, they can't do anything. And they come to the temple, and we have judges who restrict their records and give people a new lease on life. And we've been doing that for years now with Ebenezer Baptist Church. And we co-founded with Ebenezer an organization called endingmassincarceration.com. You can go to that website and you can download the playbook that we wrote with Ebenezer on how to conduct your own record restriction summit in your own community. We also think a lot about members of our community who are Jews of color. And we have many individuals in our congregation who are Jews of color. And we try to look at how Jews of color are treated in our community, because not everybody, people have this expectation or this idea that all Jews are white Ashkenazic from a certain part of Eastern Europe. And of course, we know that's not the case. And we want to make sure also that the Jewish members of our community also feel welcome and loved. We continue to do a lot of work with Ebenezer Baptist Church. We have had a pulpit exchange for going back now many, many, many years. Reverend Warnock speaks here at the temple, and I have the honor on many occasions of preaching at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is the greatest thing in the world, because most Jews sit in the congregation and listen with no response. If you've ever been to a synagogue before, and at Ebenezer, you get a standing ovation. You know, every third sentence is a standing ovation. So it's a lot of fun to be a rabbi at Ebenezer. But we don't just have a dinner, have a service and call it a day. We have a dinner every single year, except during COVID. And we've really nurtured relationships, and we roll up our sleeves and we do work together to make the community a much, much better place. We're going to put on the screen, if we can, we just produced an album, and the album is called Rise Up Together. You heard the Mountaintop song at the beginning. This is original music written by Rabbi Michael Lapidus that the joint choirs of the Temple and Ebenezer Baptist Church. We just commissioned this album in honor of this month that we're celebrating and this call that we're doing. And we're going to put a QR code up on the screen, I think, that will allow you to download the music at no charge. So whenever that QR code comes up, either now or later, you'll be able to just use your phone and download that music and see the kind of work that we've done together. Imagine these two choirs from the Temple and Ebenezer singing together, creating music together, but also rolling up our sleeves to do the work of justice together. That's the kind of work we're in. That's the kind of relationship that we have. And it's an honor and a privilege, and the most exciting, important work that we do.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. When you laid out the 11 areas of collaboration for us, the first time I was so overwhelmed by really the seriousness with which you've taken the building of this relationship. And if you think about it, and I like your mantra, relation, that we should not take that for granted. Dr. Plummer, when the rabbi talks about rolling up your sleeves and doing the work, you know, I'm thinking about you and your husband there in Mivitzeret, and your work with the Ethiopian community and others who you're meeting as part of your day-to-day. Tell us a little bit about a typical day. Tell us about the people you're meeting and the work that you're doing over there.
Yes, well, what we're doing, first of all, I want to give honor to and congratulations. And I was so afraid that I couldn't pronounce his name, but I'm gonna give it a try. Olamide Fagambamye. Can you please tell me how to pronounce your name? I want to say congratulations to you, because you are so important to us and to the future of Black and Jewish relationships. So I want to honor you. So can you help me to say your name right?
Well, first off, let me say thank you, but my name is Olamide Fagbamie.
Okay, Fagbamie. I got it. Did I say it right?
Just then you did. So
okay.
Olamide Fagbamie. I appreciate you for the effort as well. I really do.
Thank you. I wanted to congratulate you. And so, young men and women like Olamide, he's gonna kill me. But anyway.
He won't. He's got a big smile of appreciation on him.
Yes.
We'll work on it though, for sure.
Okay. So our work here is simply to be able to allow Black America to experience and to engage Israel. My husband and I, as I said, we've brought hundreds of youth over, and we have seen their lives totally changed as a result of them experiencing Israel and the culture. And so because our background is in television, my husband served as the president of the NRB for several years. He was the first African-American and only African-American that has had that position. And also myself, there in the Atlanta area, which was my home for 30 years, in Christian television. And so I've been in Christian television for over 25 years. And, you know, as I said earlier, that it's hard to understand something that you haven't been exposed to. And so we want to expose millennials, young African-American millennials, not limited to them, but specifically them, to experience Israel and to bring them here to study abroad for 3 months. They will come here and they will learn everything about media, broadcasting, production, everything about television and producing content. And they'll begin to tell their stories so that we can have a correct narrative of Israel, the people of Israel, and to also strengthen our faith in the God of Israel, which is, of course, you know, our the father of our faith. And so it is important for us to have boots on the ground. And that's what we are doing here. We're building a media institute, while at the same time in America, we are raising up young millennials to educate them, you know, to understand Israel and understand the true narrative, and also to help build families there in America, strong families together. And so just, you know, understanding the culture and just the so many things that we can learn from each other as a people. We want to share that with our future generations so that we can be strengthened together and bridge that relationship even stronger, and help those who can't come here through the content to understand more about Israel.
Olamide, I want to get your perspective. You're a student government leader. You're involved with student ambassadors. You are networked with other student leaders, and this has been a challenging period on many levels. And I wanted to get your advice and perspective as you're as a young leader. Like, how are we able to build this relationship to be even stronger? How are we able to be better allies for one another and hear each other, and not merely there's a part of celebration, but there's also a part of the rolling up your sleeves that Rabbi Berg talked about. What are, from your generation's perspective, what are some of the ways that we can go about, you know, taking the next steps of building the relationship?
Sure. So personally, I recognize that the first thing is understanding the commonality between both groups, and understanding like that there isn't as much of a difference. Like we're all pretty much not the same necessarily, but we have a lot of similarities in how we've all come up, and like our ultimate beliefs and just those type of things. And I think understanding that portion right there is the beginning portion. Next, I also think it's understanding strategy. I'm taking a history of African diaspora class currently right now, and we're going over the letter from Birmingham jail from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And in that, he talks about how to run a nonviolent campaign. In there, he discusses different techniques and 4 methods how to do it, or 4 ways to do it, or the 4 steps to do it, I should say. And one of those steps is understanding, you know, really strategy. And I think currently right now, a lot of the movements that we see in day to day, they're good in like reality, they're good in like optics, but they sometimes lack a little bit of strategy. So I think in how we move together from both groups is coming together and really realizing the strategy of how to necessarily like overtake the oppression that we all still see to this day. But overall, I think it's just coming together to really see that it's not the division that they try to make it in society, but it's more so us putting our heads together and really overcoming overall. I think that's the answer.
Well, it's a great answer on a number of levels, and I really appreciate that for people who are organizers and people who are leaders like yourself, there's certain things that you can get done on your own, and then there are other things, and I think this is one of my big takeaways from the shared legacy, that you can do when you have allies, when you're in building coalitions with other people outside of your own immediate community, and the multiplier effect really can kick in. I do want to let everyone know, there are some people who've asked in the chat. We will put up at the end on the screen, just so it's not a distraction now, the code so you can get the free download of the music that you heard before. And we promise if you stay till the end, you'll also get to hear another track. So we're encouraging you to stay with us on the dialogue, and we promise we'll share more of the music with you as well. Rabbi Berg, I want to come back to you on this question about digging deeper. Okay, so if you've got 11 different buckets that you're working with, there are people like me who can't sing worth a lick, and so tell us about some of the other modalities you've used to deepen the relationship and to make it, sort of not just like a check off the box thing, but really that as a result of these relationships, that it's possible then, to do something impactful together.
Great, it's a great question. Thank you. First of all, of the 11 groups that I spoke of, racial justice is one of the groups, but so many of the groups touch on racial justice. So for example, Ebenezer and many other churches in the community were involved with us in starting an organization called Outcry, which is also a separate organization that deals with the pandemic of gun violence, and there's the notion that there's too much gun violence in our community, and it has to be addressed. So we work together on all of these 11 issues, and there's so much of it relates to the work of racial justice that we do. But there are other areas as well. I'll just throw out a couple of examples. One of the projects we did that I was most excited about, first of all, a project that we did with the consulate a number of years ago. This goes back maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Was at Morehouse College. It was the King Rabin Initiative, Peace Initiative, really to talk about the manner in which both Prime Minister Rabin and Dr. King led their lives based on seeking peace, and tried to highlight those two personalities in an exhibit and in teaching opportunities at Morehouse. We did just a wonderful project with Spelman College a couple of years ago, where one of my favorite professors at Spelman, who teaches an oral history class, used her students to conduct interviews of members of the temple who were involved in the civil rights movement, right? So these are many elderly members of the congregation now who were deeply entrenched in the civil rights movement, and conducted their oral histories. They learned through this course how to do oral histories, right? So these are just some examples. But I think it also has to happen on the local individual level. And the example I'll give relates to religious leaders, but I think it's for all of us. Pastor Warnock and I decided a number of years ago, he can't do it anymore. He's now also a senator, and he's a busy guy. But before that, when he was just the Ebenezer preacher, he and I decided that we were going to work together on various community boards. We were going to pick some issues that we cared really deeply about, and we were going to engage the community that way and model for the community the manner in which this can work. So one issue that we chose was GEARS, which is the Georgia Early Education Alliance of Ready Students, right? Trying to create universal preschool education for everyone. And we decided we were going to go on this board together and we were going to work on this issue together. So that's something that can be modeled and replicated in every community, not just at the minister and rabbi level, but at the faith leader congregant level as well, and something I just want to encourage people to do. But it's also the programming. First of all, you can show shared legacies. We've done that. Many communities have done that. That's something you can bring to your community for a dialogue. It's a great dialogue piece. There are discussion guides and questions. The pulpit exchange, but I also want you to, at some point, not now, but when the webinar is over, go to endingmassincarceration.com and also see some of the work we've done there, because that's also, we've put that into a toolkit that you can take and replicate and do that work as well.
Thanks for practical, very next steps kind of things that people can do. Dr. Plummer, tell us a little bit about what surprises or what just blessings that you've encountered just by being in Israel and spending the time with the people directly in the way that you are now. Tell us about, just some people you've met and what that has done to enrich your lives in your church.
Yes, well, it has definitely been a wonderful experience. It wasn't easy at first. Of course, we had a little rough road, but it overall it's just have been a very beautiful experience. As a little girl growing up in the South, in northern Louisiana, a very small town called Bastrop, and I was born right at the end of the Jim Crow laws in 1965. Telling my age there. However, growing up in the South and learning the stories of the Bible, learning the stories of the Jewish people, learning the love, the relationship or the covenant that God had with the people of Israel was just a beautiful story to read about. And as you know, as African American, those songs and stories of the Bible were the ones who really gave us hope and gave us strength to get through. And so what I found is that being here in the land and after growing up, hearing those stories, not only hearing those stories, but applying the faith of the scriptures that they also applied during their journey has really, really helped me in my life. But coming here to experience it, to be in the land, to first of all to understand and to see the fulfillment of promise is quite. Every morning I wake up, I look at Jerusalem, and it's just such a beautiful. I mean, I don't even have enough words to really describe how I feel when I wake up every morning and am able to see Jerusalem. But on a day-to-day basis, interacting with the people has been wonderful in terms of understanding how the Word of God takes precedence. Okay. And also, it's amazing, even though I don't speak the language and I'm learning Hebrew, when I go into the grocery store, everyone is so helpful. It's this camaraderie, it's this unspoken camaraderie that I feel each and every day while I'm here. And, when we think about what Black Americans, and which we like to call ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves, and the Jewish people, and as you all have spoken about previously in our parallels, it is important for us to come together with solidarity because both groups have faced racism and anti-Semitism. And so being here and, experiencing just even, as Israel is surrounded by enemies, and really, experiencing the rockets and having to run into the bomb shelter and really, really experiencing the life that they live is quite. I remember, right when all the 4,000 rockets were going off, and we had 15 seconds to get into our bomb shelter. Just understanding that even though there's been a lot of work done in the fulfillment of the promised land, it's here, but understanding their plight, understanding, their perspective and how they see things and why they see things, and being here, living amongst, them as a people group, helps me to understand how I can better be a friend, and as well as to help them to understand how, we can forge that relationship together. So it has been quite an experience, but it's been a beautiful experience. It's an educating experience, and it helps me to be able to articulate more to the people that I mentor, to our church, to the people that I speak to really understand, the land, the people, and that is not just a story tale. It's not just something that we are reading about. It's an actual land with an actual people, and that God is continuing to still fulfill his covenant. And that, even though Blacks and Jews, during the civil rights acts, work together, they forged together to be concerned. They took the care of each other's plight as their own. And to see that parallel, to see that relationship and where we are today, what I find is in building the relationship is that there's so much that we as a people, because although, many Jews have grown financially and so forth, of course, African Americans, we have grown from in terms of economically, but we still have a long way to go in terms of our communities and helping to rebuild them financially in every aspect of life. And so what I found is that understanding how through all of the trial, through all of the challenges that they had as a people, they still made it to the promised land, and they're still existing. And I think that that's what we as a people, as African Americans, can learn in terms of, like Alamad said, is that the strategies. What were the strategies? And so, I find that family is beautiful here, and it's prioritized. So many primary points that I am learning and that I want to implement, in our community to help our people understand that now we move from the song to the strategy of life, so that we can have a longevity of fulfillment, in life, and move beyond, our struggle. So that's
beautiful and really meaningful. Olamide, as you sort of process the discussion topics from this panel and think about, the King legacy, what can we do better? What should we be doing better? And how do we engage more younger generation people, your friends and your colleagues? What do you think will appeal to them about issues that you all, that younger generations consider to be high priority?
I see that in ways that we can do better in those aspects is understanding and kind of celebrating those who are doing those right now. So who are doing well right now, who are continuously making that effort. So a good example could be how we're seeing the collaboration between newly elected senators from the last election in Georgia, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, and like just the work they're doing together, and how regardless of their backgrounds or whatever it may be, they're working together to be better for the people at large. outside of that, like I said, acknowledging the successes and everything that we're both doing in both communities. I think that's a one place to be. A way to get people like myself and others more engaged who are in this age group. I will say one thing is for sure is that I would say my generation, I think, they're engaged with these type of topics. We know more than what people give us credit for. And because we do, I think engaging with us and coming down to actually like speak to us about these things like people did back in the day, and like they're still doing now, it would be helpful. Coming in and having like this type of discussion, and maybe like what we have here at Morehouse College at Ray Charles Performing Arts Center, or what we're soon to have is King Chapel back up and running. But giving space for these discussions to hear students' perspectives, to even give students those opportunities to lead like we're doing now, and presenting those strategies and those solutions to a better world and a better life.
Well, I can't wait for you to graduate. You're a senior, right?
Yeah, I graduated.
Okay, well, we're ready. I mean, the whole world's ready for you and your approach to passing the mantle. And in so many respects, it's so beautiful to have seen, you know, how Dr. Plummer took the baton and created something with her family. And as she said earlier, you know, it's now really your generation that maybe grew up, some of whom got to, I don't know, sing in the exchange between Ebenezer and the temple in Atlanta. Maybe there's some of those choir boys and girls who are going to remember those experiences as, you know, a shared value, a shared legacy that they want to continue themselves. Rabbi Berg, I'll give you one sentence or one psuk or one moment to a thought to sort of close out this very rich and vibrant and certainly celebratory webinar today before we show people the music code.
I know our time is up, and the most dangerous thing in the world is to turn to a rabbi and say, just say one sentence. It's never happened in 4,000 years of history. But I'll just say very simply, we often say at the temple that the civil rights movement was a defining moment in the history of the world, but we cannot look back and just pat ourselves on the back and say, look what we did then, and say, stop, it's enough. There is so much more work to be done. I saw someone had posted about the plight of Ethiopian Jews in Israel, and there is so much work to be done. The airlift from Ethiopia to Israel, one of the most miraculous events in world history. But if we just pat ourselves on the back and say the work is done, I think that's you know, there's still a lot of work to do. And I think that's why we're all on this call. We're here together because we care deeply about Black-Jewish relations. We care deeply about the state of Israel. And we care deeply about making sure that we work together to make a better world. And we have inherited a legacy, as I said earlier, from Prime Minister Rabin, from Dr. King, and we stand on their shoulders. And it's our time now to not just rest on laurels, but to pick up in our day and our time, and to leave this world a better place for our children and for our children's children.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Hard to. Maybe it wasn't a sentence, but it was still pretty tight. So thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Olamide. Thank you, Dr. Plummer. While I'm sort of closing up here, we'll put up the code so you can get a sense of this next week. Please come back and join us from another mountaintop in Israel. We'll be in Daliat al Carmel. We'll be exploring the Druze community with our favorite tour guide, Reuven Solomon, on one of our virtual tours. We've covered a lot of ground during this pandemic, but we haven't been to a Druze village yet. So please come back and join us. It's an amazing slice of life with a fascinating group in Israel that we hope you'll join with us to see. Continue to learn about this relationship. As all of our panelists had said, this is just an exposure point, and for Black History Month, certainly something that we wanted to lift up a bit. But you have an opportunity to listen to the music, to bring the film, to share with others, to invite students to be teachers and not only students, because they have a lot to share. There are lots of ways that we can build this relationship with some intentionality, and with having learned from this great model in Atlanta that the Consul General has helped invest in, but also to help share that we need to do this in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. So thanks everyone for being with us. Watch for the code now for those of you that want to hear all the music. And for those of you who just want to sort of head into your day with a little bit of inspiring music, we'll leave you with this last piece, appropriately titled Rise Up.
Let it rise up. Let the good in you just rise.